Okay, I want you to imagine that you are running one of the largest drug operations in the Southwest while smiling behind a fast food counter and shaking hands with the DEA. That is the double life that Gus Fring managed to maintain for years. From cartel violence to federal investigations, Gus was constantly walking a tightrope, and looking back, it's almost unbelievable how long he managed to maintain his secret. So, here is every time Gus Fring almost got caught in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Gus questioned after Gale's murder, when Jesse killed Gale and the authorities discovered Gus's fingerprints at Gale's apartment. This immediately put him in a dangerous position because his prints tied him directly to a murder scene. Gus was called in for questioning by the Albuquerque Police Department with DEA agents present, and while waiting at the station, Gus noticed a sketch of Victor on a bulletin board since Victor had been seen at Gale's apartment, but unfortunately, Gus had already handled the situation, leaving the authorities with no real leads to follow. Moments later, Gus was brought into a room with Sergeant Tim Roberts, Murkett, and other agents. He was told he could have an attorney and that the conversation would be recorded, but he declined, claiming he had nothing to hide. Then, when asked why his prints were at the murder scene, Gus already had a cover prepared.
15 years ago, I established a chemistry scholarship at UNM.
He mentioned how Gale later approached him at Los Pollos Hermanos about a potential project and invited him over for dinner to discuss funding. But the questioning took a turn when Hank asked if Gustavo Fring was his real name.
Is Gustavo Fring your real name?
Is it my real name?
I know you're a Chilean national, but there are no records of you ever living there.
Really?
There's no record of Gustavo Fring ever having existed in Chile, which I find, I don't know, strange.
Now, most criminals would panic here, but Gus stayed composed, carefully answering each question without revealing anything that could tie him to illegal activity.
But it was also notoriously unreliable at keeping records.
By the end of the investigation, Gus convinced Gomez and Murkett that he wasn't involved.
I was definitely curious when his print showed up at Bedeker's apartment, but for me, the scholarship thing explains it.
They accepted his story and let him go, but Hank was still suspicious. He would be really good at Among Us, by the way.
Walt, I don't know, man. You've been seeming sus lately. It's almost like we have an imposter among us.
And that suspicion of his would matter in the upcoming close calls on our list. What if Hank had pressed further on Gus's identity or dug deeper into his Chilean background, serious doubts could have emerged about his story. If investigators had cross-checked his movements or connected him to other suspicious activity, Gus might have been arrested or linked to Gale's murder, putting his entire operation at risk. Then the sketch of Victor was an even bigger risk. If the DEA had figured out who he was, they could have picked him up and flipped him on Gus, potentially exposing everything he had built. 2. The GPS tracker. After the APD interrogation, Hank still remained suspicious of Gus and came up with a plan to gather evidence. He asked Walt to drive him to a mineral show the next day, unaware of Hank's true plan. When they arrived at Los Pollos Hermanos, Hank revealed the truth.
Well, I suspect. I can't prove it, mind you, but I suspect. The man's a drug dealer.
Poor Walter was confused and asked why Hank was sharing all of these suspicions.
See that Volvo station wagon over there? I mean, the guy drives a 10-year-old Volvo. It's brilliant. Anyway, listen. What I need for you to do is stick this on it. GPS tracker.
Walt just needed to attach the tracker and later pick it up so Hank could see where Gus had been. Walt approached Gus's vehicle and pretended to tie a shoe, making it look like he was planting the tracker right in front of Hank. Then he walked inside the restaurant, pulled out the tracker, and told Gus he hadn't actually placed it yet. But when Gus asked him to plant it properly, it left Walt speechless.
I didn't do it. See, I didn't do it. Do it. May I help you with your order?
Walt went back outside with a drink and bent down once again to place the tracker under the car. But when Hank later retrieved the tracker and checked the data, it only showed Gus traveling between his home and that specific Los Pollos Hermanos location. Gus had carefully controlled the situation since he only used the tracked car to go home and back to the restaurant while using other vehicles to handle his business.
All right, baby, let's see what we got. What the hell? Look at this. Bump, 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 bump. That's work. That's home. That's work. That's home. What, this guy? He goes 2 places every day all week? It's unbelievable.
But Gus owned 13 other restaurants, yet the tracker never showed him visiting a single one of them. The same route appeared again and again, home to work to home, with almost no variation. Instead of clearing Gus, it made Hank even more suspicious. To him, it felt controlled, like Gus was being careful about where the car went. What if Hank had asked Gomez or someone else to come along instead of Walter, they wouldn't have been able to warn Gus about the tracker, and Gus would have driven normally, visiting warehouses, safe locations, or other properties tied to his operation? One unexpected stop would have been enough for Hank to dig deeper. 3. Hank drives to the laundry with Walter. After the GPS tracker showed Gus living a clean, boring routine, Hank didn't let it go. Instead of watching Gus himself, he realized the operation had to be running from somewhere Gus didn't need to visit. So that meant a secure location tied to his business network where everything could stay hidden. Hank asked Walt to give him a ride, and Walt assumed they were heading back to stake out the chicken farm. But partway through the drive, Hank changed directions and told him to take them somewhere else.
Loop enough to know. Listen, take a right at the street here, man.
Right? But, going to the chicken farm, it's straight ahead.
No, take a little detour. Yeah, there's this, industrial laundry I want to check out.
When Walt heard about the laundry in Madrigal, he started doing everything he could to make it seem like Hank was chasing a dead end.
Sounds like a real shot in the dark there. I mean, you said it yourself. If this Madrigal, is it? If this is such a big conglomerate, then they must own all kinds of businesses. No, it just sounds kind of thin.
But then Hank explained why the laundry made perfect sense.
Madrigal Electromotive also owns a subsidiary that manufactures this state-of-the-art air filtration system. And none other than Gail Bedecker took delivery of one of these systems. Yeah, a chemist who was in possession of hand-drawn plans for a meth superlab and was visited by none other than Gus Fring just days before he was capped in the face, okay?
As they approached the entrance, Walt realized he was driving his DEA agent brother-in-law straight to the superlab. And instead of turning in, he drove past the entrance.
There it is, right up there. Just turn in there. Walt, slow down. You gotta turn in there, Walt. Walt, what are you doing? You just missed it.
Sorry.
Hank told him to turn around, and at that moment, Walt panicked and made a reckless turn into oncoming traffic, crashing the car on purpose just to stop Hank from reaching the building. What if? If Hank had reached the laundry that day, even without proof, the situation could have changed immediately. He already suspected Gus, and the laundry would have given him a physical location to focus on. From there, he could have started watching the building, noticing who went in and out, or pushed for a warrant based on Gail's connection and the Madrigal equipment. Even the way Walt crashed the car and how Gus warned about the tracker could have made Hank suspicious that Walt was intentionally sabotaging the investigation, and that he might be an inside man. 4. Gomez investigates the laundry. But when Hank wasn't able to visit the laundry and was confined to a wheelchair, he still couldn't shake his suspicion of Gustavo. So, with no other options, he asked his buddy Gomez to investigate the laundry, and Gomez didn't believe Gus was involved, but Hank pressed him.
Now, if we even had a shred of proof.
Wasn't that what you get paid to go get from that laundry I told you about? I'd start there.
Even if you were right, and you ain't. But if you were, there's no way in hell a judge is gonna give me a search warrant.
Search warrant? What happened to good old-fashioned knock and talk? Oh, that's right. I forgot. You were never very good at those, were you?
Reluctantly, Gomez agreed to go, and when he arrived at the laundry, he used a fabricated story about a senator's son, a chef whose clothes might have been laundered with heroin.
Listen, you know what? I have to check on my boss, and he's out of town, and I can't promise I'll reach him anytime soon either,
But you're probably gonna have to close down for the day.
What? Why?
20 agents poking around? Come on, it'd be less trouble if it was just us two. But, your call.
Then Dennis, the manager, let him search the facility without a warrant as long as they made it quick, and they even brought in a drug-sniffing dog to assist them as Gomez walked through the building and took pictures. At one point, they were standing directly above the hidden entrance to Gus's underground lab, and while the dog sniffed over the area, it didn't find anything. Then beneath them, Jesse had shut down the lab equipment and waited silently with Tyrus, ensuring no sound or activity would give them away.
So, how long we gotta be quiet down here? And what happens after this? Provided they don't find their way in here and bust our asses.
Eventually, Gomez found nothing, and after taking a bunch of photos, he left the laundry without discovering the lab. What if? If Gomez had asked more detailed questions or insisted on a longer inspection, he might have noticed the subtle signs of the hidden entrance. Even a small slip like the dog pawing near the hatch, a loose floor panel, a minor noise from the lab, or a tiny drop of meth packed by the workers that went unnoticed could have drawn his attention. Any of these small details might have triggered a full search, putting Gus's superlab and his entire operation at serious risk. 5. Hector Salamanca at Los Pollos Hermanos. But let's take a moment to look at some of Gus's close calls from Better Call Saul. Hector Salamanca had just lost his usual way of moving drugs across the border after Mike sabotaged his operation by planting cocaine on his trucks and letting border dogs detect the residue and getting the entire smuggling route shut down. Now, he needed a new way to move his product, but instead of handling it quietly, Hector showed up at Los Pollos Hermanos with Nacho and Arturo, remember him? Well, the moment they walked in, Hector demanded to see Gus.
I need to see your boss, not the manager, the boss.
You mean Mr. Fring?
Mr. Fring.
When he realized Gus wasn't there, he didn't care about the fact that he was in a public restaurant. He lit a cigar right under a no smoking sign, even when my boy Lyle, the assistant manager, asked him to stop multiple times.
Excuse me, sir. You can't light that in here. Sir?
But Hector, being the Chad he is, just ignored him, walked behind the counter and poured himself a drink as if he owned the restaurant. The people eating their meals could feel that things could go wrong at any second. When a mother tried to leave with her kid, Arturo stopped her from leaving, but Nacho let her go since she wasn't a threat. Meanwhile, Gus, who was at a fire department across town, received the call. He left immediately and returned to the restaurant, where he found his employees being held hostage.
I want you all to go home now. You will be compensated for your full shifts. Normal schedule tomorrow. Go, now. We are closed for today.
Once the employees were gone, Gus confronted Hector in his office where he patiently waited to make his demands.
I am the cartel, and from now on, you are my mule. You are going to bring my product north.
Gus initially said no, but since Hector wouldn't take no for an answer, he eventually agreed to avoid violence in a public restaurant. The next morning, Gus addressed his employees when Lyle asked who the men were. He explained that they were extortionists from Mexico.
I must confess that I almost gave them what they wanted. Then I thought, no. This is America. Here, the righteous have no reason to fear. Here, those men have no power. And when they saw that I had no fear of them, they ran, like the cowards they are, back across the border. They will not return.
By the end of the conversation, his employees were none the wiser to the danger that had just been in their restaurant. What if? If Hector had hurt someone or if a customer had called the police while he was inside, Gus's cover could have fallen apart immediately. Officers responding to a cartel incident at Los Pollos Hermanos would have tied Gus to it on the spot. Even if employees or customers later talked about armed cartel men showing up at their workplace, it could have triggered reports, interviews, and follow-up attention that Gus could not control. 6. The Werner Ziegler vulnerability. Now, guys, the superlab was a massive project that would let Gus produce meth while staying independent from the cartel and keep everything hidden behind legitimate business fronts. But for it to work, the construction had to remain secret at all costs. To make that happen, Gus hired Werner Ziegler and his crew and kept them in an isolated warehouse. But that decision created a problem Gus didn't fully account for. No wifey time! The project took longer than expected, and to relieve some pressure, Mike took them out to a strip club for the night. The noise and chaos didn't sit well with Werner, though, so he and Mike moved to a quieter bar nearby. When Mike stepped away to deal with Kai, though, causing trouble back at the club, Werner got drunk and started talking to strangers at the bar. Using the back of a beer mat, he sketched and described the construction work that he was overseeing. He didn't name names or locations, but he said enough to suggest something massive was being built underground.
How about... No, Terry. Support must be invisible. You can't throw a column here, a column there.
And things only got worse from there. Werner admitted to Mike that the excavation was taking longer than planned and that he was struggling with the separation from his wife. No wifey time.
Kai could supervise the work until I get back. I don't wish to cause you hardship, even though I'd only be gone for 4 days.
Now, meeting his wife wasn't possible, but Mike, bending the rules, allowed him to call her and even let the conversation go on longer than it should have. But that small act of mercy created another crack in the operation. The next day, Werner crossed a line he couldn't come back from. He escaped the warehouse and arranged to meet his wife, Marguerite, at a small desert motel. His plan was simple: spend a few days with her, then return and finish the job. But from Gus's perspective, Werner was now an uncontrolled variable with direct knowledge of the lab. Lalo Salamanca was already paying attention to Gus's operations, and when Werner disappeared, Lalo tracked down his location and called him, pretending to be a part of Gus's crew.
I'm calling on behalf of Gustavo Fring.
Werner, unaware of who he was speaking to, answered his questions. He didn't give away everything, but he gave away just enough to confirm that something major was being built, and that Gus Fring was behind it.
Do you remember what your instructions were?
Certainly. They are to finish clearing the debris, then begin the south wall.
That's the south wall?
Yes. The concrete is standing by. They can stop pouring. It's very straightforward.
Kai will not...
At that point, though, the damage was done. The superlab tied Gus directly to meth production, and if it was ever discovered, there would have been no explanation that could save him. So Gus was left with no scenario where Werner could walk away alive, and Mike decided to take care of Werner himself.
All right, I'll bring him in now.
No. Keep him there.
I'd go another way.
That I know.
That'd be a mistake.
This discussion serves no purpose. Wait where you are.
I'll take care of it.
Are you sure?
Yes.
After Werner was killed, Gus moved quickly to contain the fallout. The remaining crew was paid in full and sent back to Germany. And on paper, the problem was solved, but the risk didn't disappear.
It was worth 50 of you.
Every one of those men knew what they had been building, and that their boss had been killed because of it. Any one of them could have taken the money and gone to the authorities, turning Gus's greatest asset into the evidence that destroyed him. What if? If Werner had kept talking that night, or if the wrong person at the bar had understood what he was describing, the lab could have reached law enforcement before it was even finished. If Lalo had pulled a few more details out of him during that phone call, the cartel would have known Gus was building a lab behind their backs. And if Werner hadn't been tracked down, he might have gone to the authorities to save his own life, knowing Gus's face, Mike's face, and exactly what they were building. Plus, if even one member of the construction crew had gone to the authorities after Werner's death, the superlab could have been the thing that exposed him completely. 7. Nacho could have gone to the DEA. When Nacho swapped Hector's medication in that awesome, crazy intense scene, Gus figured it out, though, almost instantly. It was a move that could have gotten Nacho killed on the spot, but instead of punishing him, Gus saw an opportunity.
I know what you've done. You are mine.
He turned Nacho into an inside man and used him to gain intelligence on every move the Salamancas made. The situation became far more dangerous when Lalo entered the picture. One night, while Nacho was sleeping, he was forcibly taken from his home and brought to a restaurant where his father was eating. Gus explained that Nacho needed to get close to Lalo, earn his trust, and report every single move back to him.
Lalo Salamanca. I need to know what he's going to do before he does it.
Nacho had no choice but to agree since his father's life depended on it. But it's insane to think just how easily Nacho could have brought down Gus, because after helping set up the ambush on Lalo, Nacho escaped and was on the run. At that moment, Nacho had no allies left, no protection, and no clear way out. Calling the police or the DEA could have felt like the only option to save himself and his father. What if? If Nacho had decided to turn on Gus, he could have gone to the authorities or the DEA, striking a deal for protection for himself and his father. Every secret about Gus's operation, from the Salamanca network to his hidden alliances, would have been exposed, and Gus's carefully built empire could have collapsed overnight. 8. Gus blows up his own restaurant. But mentioning Nacho reminded me of the time when Lalo called Nacho up from inside his jail cell and ordered him to burn down one of Gus's restaurants, because, you know, that's conversations you have with friends.
Listen, got something for you to do.
And for Nacho, this was a nightmare scenario since refusing wasn't an option. And Nacho was already Gus's inside man. If he hesitated, Lalo would grow suspicious. If he acted recklessly, he could expose Gus or himself. Nacho told Mike about the call, and that information made its way straight to Gus. With Nacho's cover on the line, Gus made a decision almost no one else in his position would even consider. He chose to destroy his own business. That night, Gus and Nacho entered a Los Pollos Hermanos restaurant, and Nacho vandalized the drinking area to make the attack look sloppy and impulsive. It was exactly the kind of damage Lalo would expect. Meanwhile, Gus turned up the gas burners, filled a fryer with oil, and pulled a frozen chicken out from the freezer. He placed it on the back edge of the cooker and angled it so that as it melted, it would slowly slide forward. And once everything was set, Gus walked out of the restaurant and returned to his car. Minutes later, the chicken slipped into the fryer, igniting the overheated spill. From the outside, it looked like reckless cartel violence, but in reality, it was perfectly controlled chaos. Gus had voluntarily created a crime scene, risking police investigation, witnesses, and potential fingerprints, and yet the explosion served its purpose perfectly. Lalo appeared increasingly chaotic and unstable, giving Gus the leverage he needed. What if? If anyone had seen Gus or Nacho entering the restaurant that night, the entire plan could have collapsed before it even worked. A neighbor, a passing car, or a single security camera catching Gus Fring inside of his own business after hours would have tied him directly to an arson investigation. And if someone had looked closely at the fire and realized it was set on purpose, it would have caused serious problems. Questions about why the restaurant was burned, investigations by the authorities, and attention on Gus could have put his whole operation at risk. 9. Lalo and the superlab. After the ambush on Lalo's compound in Mexico, Gus thought he was dead. Even the cartel believed Lalo was dead, and for Gus, that meant the biggest threat to his operation was gone. But Gus later learned the truth because he had Hector's phone bugged at the nursing home. Lalo manipulated the situation to his advantage and told Hector that he was going to strike Gus that night.
Esa es la mala. La buena es que vuelvo al plan original. A él le va a llegar una sorpresa en la noche.
Even though Gus was ready for an attack, what Gus didn't expect was how Lalo would get around his security. Lalo used Saul and Kim as a distraction and sent Kim over to Gus's house to kill him. This led to Mike pulling Gus's men away from the laundry, and while everyone was focused elsewhere, Lalo slipped inside the superlab, unnoticed. Inside, Lalo killed Gus's guards and took Gus hostage. Then he pulled out a camera and began recording. Lalo forced Gus to explain the lab on camera. When Gus hesitated, Lalo shot him in the chest, hitting the body armor to show he was in control here.
Tenemos como 13 minutos antes de que llegue su gringo pelón y la caballería, así que Gustavo os va a dar un tour rápido.
Gus then opened up the hidden entrance and led Lalo down into the unfinished lab. As they walked, Lalo filmed everything, documenting the proof that Gus had betrayed the cartel.
Don Eladio, he escuchado algunas historias sobre este lugar.
This was the closest Gus ever came to being fully exposed since the lab was being recorded and Gus was standing right there confirming it. But even when all odds seemed against him, Gus managed to buy himself time by talking about Don Eladio and the Salamancas.
Una palabra callejera. Peleando por obras tiene más honor. Pero solo entienden sangre por dinero. Son unas putas.
As Lalo kept filming, Gus moved near the power cord and kicked it, cutting out the lights.
You done? No. Not yet.
In the darkness, Gus reached for the gun he had hidden earlier and shot Lalo, killing him before the footage could ever leave the lab. What if? If Lalo had made it out of the super lab alive, Gus Fring would have been finished long before the DEA ever caught up to him. The footage alone would have been enough. Once that video reached Don Eladio, there would have been no explanation, no negotiation, and no chance to talk his way out of it. Gus wouldn't have been arrested or put on trial. He would have been quietly erased by the cartel for building a meth lab behind their backs. 10. If Don Eladio took Hector seriously. After Lalo was killed in the superlab, there was still one person who knew the truth and refused to let it go: Hector Salamanca. Even in his condition, Hector was fully aware what had happened. He realized that Lalo had survived the attack in Mexico since Lalo had called him afterwards and accused Gus of being a traitor. The allegation was serious enough that Don Eladio summoned everyone to Hacienda in Mexico. By the Fool, Bolsa read Hector's claims out loud in front of everyone. Hector insisted that Lalo had spoken to him personally and warned him about Gus.
El atentado contra mi sobrino en su hacienda falló. Lalo le ganó a los asesinos. El día después del ataque, Lalo me llamó. Escuché la verdad de sus propios labios. Fue Fring quien mandó a los asesinos, no los peruanos. Mi sobrino estaba a punto de vengarse del traidor, pero desapareció.
When Eladio turned to Gus for an answer, Gus stayed calm and dismissed the accusation, completely saying it wasn't even worth responding to.
Es como defenderte. Con todo respeto, no me parece que esto merezca una respuesta.
From Eladio's point of view, the evidence was already settled. he first asked the cousins if they had seen Lalo's body.
Ustedes presenciaron estas llamadas de Lalo, pero me han dicho que ustedes vieron el cuerpo de Lalo.
Sí, estaba quemado.
And when Bolsa confirmed that the dental records matched, Hector sounded like a bitter old man driven by hatred, not someone exposing a betrayal.
¿Y acaso no los federales revisan los dientes?
Así es, Don Eladio. Mi hermano dice que el registro dental sí coincide.
Hector, meanwhile, furiously dinged his bell, but Eladio dismissed the claims and ordered the cousins to take him inside. Poor Hector, man. I can only imagine the frustration he must have felt because he knew the truth. And also, if you think about it, Don Eladio was mocking a man with a disability, but yet he was powerless to convince the cartel. It was clearer Eladio wasn't suspicious of Gus at all, since he even joked about letting Gus stay the night.
Te invitaría que te quedes también, Gustavo, pero no quiero que me arruine el desayuno con el...
But as Gus was leaving, Eladio reminded him of his place.
Cuando te miré los ojos, el odio. Un poquito no está mal. Siempre y cuando no te olvides de quién manda.
Eladio knew Gus hated him, so there was a real chance he would have taken Hector's warning seriously or put men on Gus to watch him. Gus survived this moment because Eladio understood both Hector and the situation. He saw Gus as a useful tool even though he knew he hated him, and Hector as a broken man obsessed with revenge. That single assumption saved Gus's life. What if Don Eladio had taken Hector seriously for even a moment, everything would have ended there. If he had investigated Hector's claims about the phone call or doubted the validity of the dental records, Gus's entire plan could have fallen apart. The only reason that didn't happen was that the one man telling the truth was the one no one wanted to believe. 11. The cousins at Los Pollos Hermanos. And fellow viewers, I almost forgot the time when Tuco Salamanca's cousins Marco and Lionel were furious and wanted revenge after his death. They came in with style after stealing a minivan from an innocent disabled person, especially for their uncle, to a meeting with Gus and Bolsa. And man, aren't they just the sweetest guys ever?
Mira, Don Salamanca tenía un sobrino que se llamaba Tuco. Heisenberg, Walter White, era uno de los proveedores locales de Tuco, hasta que traicionó a Tuco.
But the cousins demanded the right to take revenge against Walter White, but Gus asked them to postpone their attack until his business with Walt was resolved.
No tengo ningún problema con sus deudas cuando nuestros negocios se terminen. No me importará lo que hagan con él. Hasta entonces, lo necesito.
Bolsa privately warned him that the cousins were unpredictable and might not wait, leaving Gus in a delicate position. The cousins quickly grew impatient and started visiting Los Pollos Hermanos during business hours, sitting silently in a booth for the entire day, making it clear that through their presence, they could act at any moment. And the next day, they returned again, repeating the same intimidating routine. Gus knew that letting them stay in the restaurant created risk, not just for his business, but also for his employees, especially since they had just stolen a minivan and assaulted a disabled person. Guys, seriously, even a tiny slip-up here could have drawn police attention. To regain control, though, Gus set up a meeting with the cousins in the desert and asked them why they were so determined to kill Walt when someone else had pulled the trigger.
Explíquenme. ¿Por qué este hombre White?
Pero Bolsa dice que la DEA está fuera de límites.
Marco pointed out that Bolsa had stopped them from targeting the DEA, but Gus quickly took charge by reminding them of who controlled the territory north of the border.
Al norte de la frontera es mi territorio, mi decir.
Then Gus pulled one of his smartest moves by giving them Hank Schrader's name, redirecting their anger away from Walter and towards the DEA agent responsible for Tuco's death.
Como muestra de respeto, digo que sí. El nombre de la gente es Hank Schrader.
What if? Well, if they had acted publicly at Los Pollos Hermanos, it could have drawn the police and DEA's attention and exposed Gus's connection to the cartel. From stealing minivans to causing all sorts of havoc, there was a high chance people could have tracked the minivan and connected the dots of them spending hours at the restaurant, interviewing employees and whatnot. By sending them after Hank, Gus minimized the risk. If Hank died, the DEA would blame the cartel. If he survived, the cartel would lose 2 of its deadliest operatives without endangering Gustavo's empire. Well, folks, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like or try out the new hype button, however that works, or press the subscribe button. Press a button. Go ahead, do it. I would appreciate it. We would appreciate it. And feel free to check out our other video on Every Time Walt Got Caught. Trust me, it's a banger. Thanks for watching. Have a good one, and bye-bye.